how long have you been with Spotify? What do you do for Spotify?
So I've been with Spotify for almost 3 years. My role is a bit complicated, but title-wise is head of automation across the region, so
What does
Southeast
that
Asia, Hong
mean?
Kong, and Taiwan. It doesn't mean much, but it means a lot internally, especially. So my role is essentially looking after the advertising sales side of the business and helping that whole team move into a new world where technology enables them to sell advertising space and data on Spotify versus manual processes and still a very heavy lifting sales force. So my role is to help them in that transition. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for the
And
past
what was
almost
Spotify
3 years.
like when you joined, and versus what is the direction of the company now?
It did change a little bit. I think this industries and this side of the world changes fast anyway. But globally, Spotify really, when I joined, was purely focused on music. Music was really the direction of the company. From an advertising sales point of view, again, it was still very manual. I'd say about 90 to 95% of the advertising business was still transacted on contracts. So not really using technology. And if
Can you
you
explain
fast
what that
forward,
means in the manual format? What does manual contractual
yeah,
mean?
it's a good question. I think a great analogy that I use, and I think I've discussed that with you before, is thinking of transportation, but a lot of industries obviously have gone through this transformation. If you think of how private transportation like taxis worked previously, before the Ubers, the Grabs, the Gojeks of the world, is a little bit of what's happening with advertising. So previously, if I wanted to go from my place into my office and I wanted to take a taxi, either I would flag someone in the street or I would have to call the taxi company, book a taxi, off I go, I pay the taxi driver. And essentially, that's how advertising, for the most part, is being transacted now. So I have to phone someone that I know I want advertising space from. I book my advertising space, I have a contract coming out, and I pay that person. So the transformation that is happening with advertising is similar to what Uber, for example, introduced, more relevant for Hong Kong, what Uber introduced to that industry, where you have an application that connects you, the person A to person B. You transact and you pay via that application. Pricing is dynamic and really, transacts and allows more people to access private transportation and more people to, as a consumer, and obviously as someone that has a car. Same thing here in the advertising space. So this allows an advertiser to connect with more platforms and for platforms to connect with more advertisers, where payment is transacted via tech platform. And that is essentially what automation, the right term in advertising is called programmatic. And we made a conscious effort internally at Spotify, and actually I drove that a little bit to change that name into automation because I think it makes more sense in it. There's also another kind of going back to your original question of what changed. I think the other two things that were big was podcasts. So Spotify really identified themselves as a music streaming platform, and now with the rise of podcasts and the amount of acquisitions they've done in the last 2 years, it really is a music platform, which means, an audio platform. So audio content overall. And with that, I think one of the greatest opportunities they saw from an advertising standpoint is create their own self-serve advertising platform.